The establishment of Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, is based on a treaty agreed on in 1975, and it was initially limited to just economic cooperation. But emerging political events in later years led to its revision and expansion of scope of cooperation in 1993.
Absolutely, Kirian, and since that time, ECOWAS has pursued a vision of promoting cooperation and integration to raise the living standards of its peoples, and it's also seeking to maintain and enhance economic stability as well as contribute to the progress and development of the African continent, especially within the sub-region.
Yeah, and however, the last decade has given the regional bloc a reputation that undermines its core objectives, as the 15-nation ECOWAS body is facing severe scrutiny and criticisms following issues of lack of capacity, vision, and ineptitude.
Now, other criticisms include the fact, as claimed by those critics, that top-level management in ECOWAS itself have vested interests of the home governments rather than pursuing the expected and wider regional agenda.
The West African leaders at a summit held last Sunday in Ghana resolved to put a stop to the many conceivable gaps in the sub-region by heralding a new chapter with the endorsement of Guinea-Bissau's President Umaru Embalo as new chairman of the ECOWAS authority for 1 year, taking over from Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo.
Now, Dr. Omar Toure, a Gambian diplomat, was also introduced as the new ECOWAS Commission President. Now, he replaces Jean-Claude Beau, who had served the past 4 years and is expected to move to the Senegal-based Central Bank of West African States as governor.
All right, and apart from the change in leadership, the Commission took major step in addressing some administrative and financial anomalies. As a matter of fact, major steps. And it also is planning to effect reform in its structure by trimming its 15 commissioner list to a slimmer 7 commissioner management.
Now, the ECOWAS leaders at the end of the summit named former Benin President Yaya Bone as the new ECOWAS mediator on the Guinea crisis. Now he takes over from Dr. Mohamed Ibn Chambas, who's the former ECOWAS Commission President. Now the leaders also lifted the economic sanctions that were imposed on Mali in January following the 2 military coups d'etat in that country.
And that is while agreeing to a revised 24-month timetable announced by the Colonel Assimi Goïta-led Bamako junta for return to constitutional rule in Mali. Of course, ECOWAS also recalled that the junta had earlier failed to respect a previous 18-month transition program after Goïta and his colleagues toppled the government of elected President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta in the first coup in August 2020. We also note that Goïta had earlier staged another revolution against the transition administration in which he was vice president in May 2021, prompting the sanctions by ECOWAS.
Well, no question about that. Many developments around the ECOWAS sub-region and what the new order portends will be the focus of our conversation this morning. How does the restructuring of ECOWAS affect individual countries? How does the restructuring of ECOWAS affect its performance or direct its focus on what will ultimately be beneficial to the sub-region? It's on that note, we'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kirian Umar, also joining my colleague. I welcome you. Also welcome him back on debate. You know, it's been away for a while.
What is a while? What is a while?
And we'll also be bringing in the complementary segments of the package as always. And we have newspaper review, business news, and others. Right now we have Comfort Amadu with the morning news highlights. Hello, Comfort.
Good morning, Kieran and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigerians. The Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources and the NNPC have been directed to mobilize key players in the Nigerian oil and gas industry to organize a befitting reception in honor of the outgoing Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, Mohammed Sanusi Barkindo. President Muhammadu Buhari, who gave the directive while formally receiving Dr. Barkindo on a courtesy visit, said the nation is proud of his legacies after 6 years of meritorious service at OPEC headquarters.
The government and people of Nigeria are indeed proud of you and the proud legacies you will leave behind. The Secretary will remember you kindly. You have done yourself and your country proud.
Meanwhile, Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, Mohammed Sanusi Barkindo, has died. His death was announced in the early hours of today by NNPC GMD Mile Kyari, who described his departure as a great loss to his immediate family, NNPC, Nigeria, OPEC, and global energy community. In a statement on his verified Twitter handle at MK Kyari at 4:32 a.m. Wednesday, the NNPC GMD wrote, "We lost our esteemed Dr. Mohammed Sanusi Barkindo. He died at about 11 p.m. yesterday, 5th July 2022, though the cause of his death was not disclosed in the tweet. Mohammed Sanusi Barkindo was age 63. The presidency has described as sad and unwelcome the shooting incident near Dusama, Katsina State, at the convoy of cars carrying the advance team of security guards, protocol, and media officers ahead of President Buhari's trip to Daura for Sallah. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, in a statement says the attackers opened fire on the convoy from ambush positions but were repelled by the military, police, and DSS personnel accompanying the convoy. 2 persons in the convoy are receiving treatment for the minor injuries they suffered. All the other personnel, staff, and vehicles made it safely to Daura. In other news, the National Assembly Joint Committee on Host Communities has summoned the Minister of Environment to appear before it to present the status of the Ogoni cleanup project. A meeting between the Parliamentary Committee, the Ministry of Environment, and Management Committee of the project was scheduled for Wednesday, 5th of July, but the absence of the minister who sent a representative stalled the engagement.
The motion that what exactly is happening? It's shocking that even the project coordinator is not also here. We had invited them for about 3 times. The motion that the honorable minister be summoned along with the project coordinator to appear before the joint committee. Say aye. Aye. Those who against say nay. The ayes have it.
Leadership of the House of Representatives has described as unacceptable the nonchalant attitude of some heads of government agencies to appear at investigative hearings, especially in relation to the economy. This is during an investigative hearing to ascertain the actual daily consumption of premium motor spirit in Nigeria.
Organizations that are saddled with the responsibility of managing a critical assignment like the distribution and accounting for the distributed and sold PMS in this country will be reluctant to come here to do their duties. The topic for this investigation is a very controversial issue. Nigerians don't know how much fuel we are consuming that warrants the payment of such humongous amounts.
The chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, has assured the people of Osun State to expect credible election in the forthcoming governorship election in the state. The INEC boss gave the assurance while addressing Osun State Council of Obas.
So the people of Osun, young and old ones, they are registered voters, should expect a very credible process. Our message is simple, that it's only the people of Osun that will determine who becomes the next governor and no one else.
The federal government of Nigeria has taken steps to reabsorb returning Nigerian students from Ukraine to Nigerian schools following the conflict in that country with Russia. A statement by the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Francisca Omayule, states that the federal government is committed in facilitating the placement of the students into various Nigerian tertiary institutions to enable them continue their studies. Interested students are advised to visit the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website on https://www.foreignaffairs.gov.ng to complete the online Nigerian student in Ukraine registration form with required information on or before 15th of July 2022. Our First Lady of Nigeria, Aisha Buhari, has reaffirmed her determination towards supporting the lives of Nigerian women and children, especially at the grassroots. The First Lady stated this in a message during the presentation of medical equipment to General Hospital, Suleja, Niger State. This is in continuation of the Future Assured nationwide medical outreach towards improving the health of women and children in the country. Presenting the equipment to the beneficiaries, the First Lady, through the Special Assistant to the President on Health and Development Partners, Dr. Victoria Ogali Akugu, has enjoined them to use the items for maximum benefit. The Nigerian Correctional Services confirmed that about 10 o'clock Tuesday night, some yet to be identified gunmen attacked the Medium Security Custodial Center Kuje in the Federal Capital Territory. In a statement, the Service Public Relations Officer Umar Abubakar says men of the armed squad of the Nigerian Correctional Service and other security agencies attached to the Custodial Center have restored calm to the facility and the situation is under control. We will bring you further details at the close of our bulletins. That concludes the morning news. Kieran and Kingsley will continue with Good Morning Nigeria after this break.
All right, and you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. EU pledges to invest $1.3 billion in Nigeria's agri sector and renewable energy. Details of that and more on Business News.
The European Union has pledged to provide $1 billion to boost agricultural activities in Nigeria and power generation. The EU delegation, after a meeting in Lagos, announced that the commitment financed projects will include agricultural development, road network, waste-to-energy initiative in Cross River State, as well as combating deforestation and desertification.
That is the only way that can work in Nigeria as everywhere, that through which we will try to support the government in the implementation of its policies and its priorities.
The fund will be provided under the Green Deal initiative of the EU, and the funding will run until 2027. In equities market, investors lost 101.49 billion naira as NGX all-share index dipped by 0.40% to close at 51,586.50 basis points against 0.07% loss recorded at the end of the previous trading session as sell pressure persists. The total volume traded advanced by 20.85% to close at 234.61 million, valued at 2.57 billion naira, and traded in 4,646 deals.
That was a business package with Comfort Amodu. We, of course, now moving ahead to newspaper review. Our newspaper reviewer, Baya Toby, is right here with us in the studios. Baya, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kaya.
Yeah, Baya, it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, now let's begin the review with the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper above the name flag. Now we have terrorists attack Buhari's advance team, kill 2 policemen. That's on page 8. Lagos, Kano, FCT, Ogun lead telecom subscribers growth. That's on page 26. State chairman reject Wike Camp's anti-IU plot. Details on page 2. All right, now below the name flag, and of course the lead story. Just before that, let's take this. INSEA foreign firm signed 50 million naira anti-carbon deal. It's on page 24. Debt, inflation, forex killing economy. LCC warns federal government. That's on page 19. Now the lead story is on COVID-19 cases jumped by 67% in 2 weeks. 2 others, Lagos NMA, NAD warn against laxity, demand protective measures. Coronavirus not on holiday, it is still around, say virologists group. All right, details of that on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. All right, moving down just below the photo story, which has members of the National Youth Service Corps. Presidential poll will be Kwankwaso's negotiations dead, says Ukube. It's on page 8. Gunmen abduct Chinese at Kwara Quarry, kill policeman. It's on page 5. 1,300 Kano intending pilgrims still stranded. The details is on page 13. Now, subsidy probe, that's at the bottom of the newspaper. Rep summon Emefiele Silva Ahmed Gankiari, as on page 26. Lagos couple lose 4 children to midnight fire, on pages 4 and 5. And lastly, Khan disowns Ondo pastor arrested for alleged abduction. Details on page 18.
All right, let's also look at the window page of the leadership newspaper. Above the nameplate, there are 2 headlines there. BPE and NEC, that's the Electricity Regulatory Commission, restructure Kano, Benin, Kaduna, Ibadan, and Port Harcourt Discos. That's on page 29. Banditry, Katsina shuts 69 primary healthcare facilities. Below that, you have CSOs blame lingering fuel scarcity on impunity and corruption. PDP says no plan to buy votes in 2023 elections. And below that, you have House Puppy. U.S. court fixes September 21st for judgment. And also on that panel, let me quickly take a couple of other headlines there. Issues around my certificate politicized. That's Okowa. And INEC threatens to cancel any election disrupted by hoodlums. And the lead story says APC asks for extra time to tackle security challenges. 2 riders as bandits go berserk, attack Buhari's convoy on advanced trip to Katsina, kill 5, abduct scores in Kaduna villages. Gunmen kill 2 policemen, abduct Chinese in Kwara and Katsina. Bye.
Thank you, Kingsley. Let's start with the story about the attack on the convoy of the president's advanced party. There is an advanced party of the president comprising security protocol and media officers who were leaving for Daura, the home of president, in anticipation of his Salah visit. However, when they got to Dusima, they came under attack by bandits. Spokesman for the presidency, Garba Shehu, says that the attackers opened fire on the convoy and the security on the convoy returned fire. Although the Punch is reporting that 2 policemen, security men, were killed, other papers are reporting that 2 security personnel suffered minor injuries and they have been provided treatment, and the convoy was able to pass safely onto Daura, their destination. Meanwhile, most papers have reported the attack that occurred at the Kurji Correctional Center. This took place about 10 p.m. yesterday. Sources have told the newspapers that they heard shootings and also explosions around an area known as Shetuku, which is in the Kuje Area Council. In fact, an estate close to the correctional center, on the social media, persons there had raised alarm and they were advised to remain indoors. However, the public relations officer for the correctional center had provided information that yes, there was an attack, and the security operatives of the correctional center have been able to ward off that attack. Details of whatever happened will be coming up later on. Meanwhile, the Federal Capital Territory on Monday enforced the closure of all parks by 7 p.m. This is sequel to a directive given the Minister of the FCTA and enforced by the Department of Parks and the Metropolitan Enforcement Agency. The argument is that all parks should close at 7 p.m. But the operators of the parks are arguing that usually when people close from office, they go to the parks to have a good time. And 7 p.m. is about the peak time when people come in. And the enforcers are saying that whatever good time you want to have, go early and close by 7 p.m.
Let's talk about that, because the number of people have also complained about that directive that's going to affect the social life of the people in the city. That is also going to portray the city as unsafe. Some people could say, look, if there's no evening life, let me not say night life. In a city, that means that city is either living in fear or something. That will instill fear in people, especially people who are visiting Nigeria. That's just the argument some people are putting across. What if one says 8, 9 o'clock or 10 p.m. as the case may be, but 7 p.m. is relatively early to some people. To the majority of those who patronize, who go to parks, and that's something that happens. Some people who live in close by cities, or those who live in the cities suburb, like Nyanya, Jukui, and the rest of them, exactly satellite towns, they usually have serious traffic, right? And sometimes some even sleep over here. And so some will go to parks to relax and wait for the parties to subside before they leave. So there are many things that are affected according to what people are saying, because I took time to really listen to complain exactly what people are putting across.
No, but what is not been stated, in my opinion, because this started first as a rumor, what has not been stated is the reason for directing those gardens to shut their businesses after 7 p.m. What is the reason?
One of the reasons that has been given is that some of the parks have been found to indulge in activities relating to drug. Although they are meant for they are parks meant for people to relax, they are also used as avenues for curing some elements of drugs. But whatever the case is, the task force that's enforcing is very adamant and determined that whatever relaxation you want to have it early in the day, and by 7 p.m. leave.
No, well, I don't know. 2 points. I mean, assuming it is the drug issue, those who are engaged in drug business can courier their drugs at any time of the day,
anywhere,
at any location. So I mean, this is not to encourage them, because at some point it might become necessary for the agencies themselves to be concerned. Look, you're talking about shutting down parks, or they're not parks in the real sense of it. They're shutting down relaxation spots by 7 p.m. Because of drug couriers. In some other countries, they have used pigeons to courier drugs. Flying pigeons to courier drugs. And one report a couple of days ago indicated that some drug operatives were using subwater means to courier their drugs.
Even drones.
Even drones. So they use all those. So that's not a rationale. I think the question must arise whether what we are facing is a pseudo curfew in the Federal Capital Territory. Is a curfew being imposed on Abuja city? That's the question to ask. Now, if it is one of security concern, I think that the more pertinent issues to worry about will be the presence of vagrants in the city. So if you have no business being in the city or anywhere, loitering around and so on and so forth, you should be removed. Now you don't see persons,
and there are hundreds.
These are vagrants. There have been reports of attacks on motorists and so on and so forth. They have no homes, and then some of them are hawking. This is what the social department or secretariat should focus on. Get these persons out of the streets. there's no infringement on their constitutional right. I'll say freedom of movement. Exactly. It doesn't. Freedom of movement, of course, is also subject to the law against vagrancy.
I was going to that. I was going to ask: is there any law that has been promulgated or an act that has been signed into law? To do that. I was thinking that look, yes, we know we have this in the capital city, we have the minister, but also we have council areas, in the city. I thought that for such decision to be taken, there would have been a kind of law,
Well, I understand what you're saying. It cannot just be a verbal directive. Is it a bylaw passed by AMAC, that is the Abuja Municipal Area Council, or is it a bylaw passed by any of the other 5 area councils in the FCT? Is this a regulation, or is this a directive by the office of the Honorable Minister? And if so, it must be gazetted and let people see. But you don't just take, because there are a number of stakeholders. For night crawlers, let's be realistic. How many businesses will be affected by this directive? I don't run any of those businesses, and I mean those who run those businesses, of course, will be up in arms against this. But what is the rationale for this, and can the rationale for it not be tackled?
And meanwhile, they pay. They pay to AMAC. They
register and they pay
their money. In the days, people are at different workplaces, right? Yeah. And they perhaps to retire in the evening, spend some hours, perhaps 7, 9, 10 as the case maybe, and turn to the house.
What we do know, again, let's give the benefit. In some jurisdictions, in some countries, bars and clubs close at a certain time. Sometimes say 2 a.m. If you're operating a discotheque, you say this discotheque or this club or this bar should shut by 2 a.m. At that time, the disc jockey announces that the club is closed, and everybody goes home. But 7 p.m. I think let's be realistic. All right. Broad daylight.
Exactly. Let's talk about other issues, Bayo.
Let me
COVID-19 returning.
Well, COVID is there. Let me draw attention to something. The story here above the nameplate of the leadership says BPE NEC restructure Kano Benin Kaduna Ibadan PH discourse. Well, it appears that the headline wasn't properly cast, in my opinion. What has happened, if you read the story on page 29, is that creditors have moved in to take over the collateralized shares. This is secure credit transaction. It tells you that Benin, Kano, Kaduna, Ibadan, and PH discos have also fallen, just like Abuja disco and Ibadan disco. That to say, you took loans to facilitate this, and the creditors, at the time, of course, you are unable to meet the terms of the loans. They have now moved in to take over those shares, as they did with Abuja disco. So it looks like a domino effect. One by one, Ibadan is gone to creditors. Abuja has gone to creditors, Kano, Benin, Kaduna, and so on. So it just tells you one thing, that again, this discourse were on rickety legs in the first instance, and now the creditors are moving in.
Even from the outset.
If I put it more succinctly, say the banks are taking over discourse.
Precisely. That's
simple as that. Yes. Well, for you and I, who the discourse have been providing service to, what is going to be our fate?
What the discourse service darkness or something?
What are we going to from bad to worse?
No.
They run the company.
What that tells you is that there's been corporate governance failure in some of these discos. And you are unable to meet your debts. So the creditors will come, secure credit, take over the collateralization. The government also had 40% in some of these things. So BPE and NEC, just battling now with how to restructure.
All right, but the time is gone by.
Time is gone. I just was going to draw attention to the development in Lagos State. Lagos State government has fired a customary court judge. What happened? He presided over a case about dispute between the husband and wife, and forced the divorce between the husband and wife, and then married the wife.
Oh, you haven't seen that video. That video has been trending.
I saw something, but I never believed it.
The Lagos State government has reacted. They've now fired the judge.
Oh, he forced the divorce and married the lady.
Yes.
All right. That's not the end of the matter. That's not the end of the matter. I mean, there are claims that the former husband could make against that magistrate. There are civil claims you can make against that magistrate.
But for now, Lagos State government has fired the judge.
But that's conduct in killing, in destroying the family, the marriage, and only
what happened? Let's with that magistrate, whatever his name, we should see his face in the papers and say this is a disreputable magistrate, and this is what he has done.
Okay, let's conclude here, and we will return again tomorrow on this segment. That's a newspaper review, and we'd like to appreciate about for being here again. We want to see him tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, bye. Thank you. You are watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We thank you for staying with us up to this moment. We'll take a short break now. Now, as a prompt for our conversation, which is on restructuring of ECOWAS, here is the background report put together by our correspondent Abu Salami Jibril.
Sunday, July 3rd, 2022, leaders of countries within the West African sub-region gathered in Accra, Ghana for the 61st Ordinary Session of the Authority of the ECOWAS Heads of State and Government. Several issues were on the front burner before the leaders that include rising insecurity in the Sahel perpetrated by ISIL and Al-Qaeda-linked groups, and questions over how the bloc will move to restore civilian rule following 3 separate military coups across the region. A prominent feature at the summit was lifting of the economic and financial sanctions imposed on Mali after its military rulers proposed a 24-month transition to democracy and published a new electoral law. Recall that the bloc had imposed stiff sanctions on Mali in January after the military government said it will not organize democratic elections the following month as initially planned. Another notable feature at the summit was the election of Umaru Sissoco Embalo, president of Guinea-Bissau, as the new chairman of ECOWAS. He will replace Nana Akufo-Addo, president of Ghana, who had been chairman since September 2020. Vice President Yemi Oshibajo, who represented President Muhammadu Buhari at the summit, charged the new leadership to resolve all pending issues affecting the sub-region that includes economic challenges, especially with the Russia-Ukraine crisis, insecurity, and political instability across the region. Recently, the regional body has been criticized for its failure to forestall and react to military coups within the region. There have also been calls for restructuring that will reflect current realities and tackle challenges bedeviling the region. How will the new leadership confront the challenges of security and political instability in the region? Apart from sanctions, what other mechanisms can be adopted towards ensuring that erring member countries are checked? Should the 15-member body rethink its approach to coups? Guest on Good Morning Nigeria will speak to these issues and more shortly.
All right, joining us in the studio now to discuss issues around the restructuring of ECOWAS and achievement of its goals, we have 2 guests. First, let's welcome Ambassador Musa Nuhu, is Nigeria's permanent representative currently to ECOWAS. Ambassador Nuhu, delighted to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Also, we have in the studios Ambassador Ilia Ali Nuhu, Nigeria's former ambassador to Mali. Ambassador Nuhu, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, so it's a case of 2 Nuhus, but they are unrelated. Let's be clear about that.
Yes, we have with us as well via Zoom Paul Ejime, International Affairs Analyst, joining us via Zoom from the UK. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kiran, and thank you, Kingsley. And Your Excellencies, good morning. And good morning, Nigeria.
All right, but gentlemen, let's begin by taking a look at the latest decisions announced by ECOWAS with regard to its governance structure and other matters arising on account of some unsavory developments in the sub-region, beginning with Nigeria's permanent rep to ECOWAS, Ambassador Musa Nuhu. Could you help our viewers get the context of the current restructuring of the governance mechanism of ECOWAS?
Thank you, Kieran, and good morning, Nigerians, once again. Well, since 2006, the member state of ECOWAS have been yearning for institutional reform in order to enhance the efficacy and efficiency of the sub-regional organization. And several efforts have been put in place in order to ensure that reform takes place. Perhaps even a consultant called Maxwell Stamp, a UK-based company, was commissioned by the organization in order to make recommendations on how the institutional reform can be carried out in ECOWAS, so that we will have a structure that will enhance the organization in terms of service delivery, not only a meeting-based organization. So the consultant were able to make about 5 recommendations in terms of the structure. Out of it, which in 2016 the commission was reduced to about 9 at that time, but it only operated for 2 years, and after that the commission reverted to the current structures of 15 statutory appointees. I recall then in January 2018 in Addis Ababa, at the sidelines of the AU summit, the head of state then mentioned the need for ECOWAS to revert to the 15 statutory appointees, whereby all member countries will have a statutory appointee at the commission. And part of their views then, which they expressed and which they felt should be accepted, then was they need to have sense of belonging. Each member country need to have a position at the commission, and that will make them to feel yes, they are part of the organization. Nigeria was very firm at that. The position is, no, we need to have a more compact structure that will make the organization work. It's not about having positions, sharing positions. But it was accepted later that yes, let's revert to that 15-man structure, and that was what happened. But since then, we know that by 2022, we are going to have a new management, and Nigeria now start engaging the member state, pointing out to them the necessity, the importance, and the imperative for the organization to reform, to have a structure that will be able to measure the expectation of the people, whereby we will have an ECOWAS, not only by mere speculation, why we are saying we have moved from ECOWAS of state to ECOWAS of the people, but without really carrying out actions that the citizens of the organization will be feeling the impact of the organization. So that was why Nigeria put a lot of effort in order to galvanize support of all member countries to ensure that the organization is structured to have a very smart, lean structure without duplication of schedules, so that it will be able to deliver. And that was exactly what was achieved at the last summit. We now have only 7 statutory appointees. In other words, we only have the president of the commission, the vice president, and only 5 commissioners at the ECOWAS commission against the 13 we have at the moment. So in essence, that was what was achieved last Sunday.
Okay, really, there's no saying, the fact that ECOWAS has not lived up to expectation, and of course, the people over time, would have, loved to have a functional, ECOWAS, as you rightly pointed out, that ECOWAS of the people, yet people are not feeling the impact of the organization. But well, we'll see how all that's not articulated, will play out, as we make progress. And let's come to Ambassador Elia Dunia. You've been ambassador to Mali, and which means that you have worked closely with the ECOWAS governance structure. All right, now give us an idea, of what this reform is all about, and how it will help in reactivating, ECOWAS as a sub-regional body.
Thank you very much. Well, the reform is called for. We have in the past had all kinds of complaints. It is overburdened, so much resources going into it, and nothing is happening. Now that it's been streamlined, with a view to making it more flexible, to run and to administer. We are hoping that we will have the leadership that will be able to galvanize all the members to be focused on delivering, the services that ECOWAS is expected to give to the citizenry. One will look back and will probably not necessarily attribute, the lack of performance of ECOWAS even to the structure. But I think it has to do more with the leadership, the will, and then the general composition of ECOWAS, itself. ECOWAS is made up of maybe three categories of countries: the Anglophone, the Francophone, and the Lusophone. And these are countries with different cultures, and not only the cultures, but they equally have a kind of attachment, to their metropolis. The Francophone, for example, are first of all, French before any other thing, and the French also have a grip, on them. It makes it very, difficult, for them to give out the kind of loyalty, that is expected, to really, pilot, the organization, to delivering, the deliveries. Often we talk about how they can give in their best, to ECOWAS, but often there is this conflicts of loyalty. They are Francophone, one. They belong to an organization called UMOA, and this organization is a counterpart of ECOWAS. In fact, if I'm allowed to say so, is an organization that they believe more in, than ECOWAS, itself.
No, it's an acronym. What's the?
It's like their own ECOWAS. It's in French,
Okay.
Yes, UMOA, and all decisions, that they take, come from UMOA, and that is what they transport, into ECOWAS. Once they have agreed, they cannot change. And you can see how the president of Cote d'Ivoire, Alassane Ouattara, single-handedly drag, some of them into adopting, the ECO, that had been a program kind of thing, ECO has been pursuing, and just announced, from the blues, that the Francophone, have gone, adopted, ECO. But this is a decision that had been taken, outside, ECO. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is that you can structure, you can do whatever you want to do. But three things are very, very important. The first of all, every member, ECOWAS must believe in ECOWAS. Secondly, other organizations that are within, ECOWAS should actually be subservient, to ECOWAS, not be, dominant, to ECOWAS. And then there has to be a mechanism, I do not know what to call it, but there has to be a framework that will gradually remove the Francophone from the grip of France so that they can have that liberty to take decision on their own without, reference, to France.
Ambassador Nuhu, thank you very much. You've raised a number of points, and we'll come to those issues. But let's bring in Paul Ejime, whom my colleague earlier introduced with us via Zoom from the United Kingdom. Paul Ejime, of course, is a writer and analyst of ECOWAS issues. Paul, well, we've had you in the past with regard to the restructuring of ECOWAS. Now, with the new decision taken, is ECOWAS, in your opinion, engaging in fresh gear to enhance its performance?
Thank you for having me. Well, thank you. I have written extensively and talked extensively. Those who are there with you, the two ambassadors Nuhu, they have also worked and are still working closely with ECOWAS. So thank you for choosing this panel. Let me repeat, they have all mentioned in part what the restructuring, but I will say that it doesn't, the point is what the ambassador, who just spoke, is about the commitment. It's about willingness. It's about the political will to now move with the objectives, the mission of the founding fathers of ECOWAS. It was founded to grow, foster integration, knowing that some of these, fault lines were there. Culture, attached affinity with the former colonial powers, and then others. But they were in the past, this is a 47-year-old organization that was able to patch some of these differences, so much so that nobody noticed what they are. But they are now being given some very dangerous assets. That is what is happening. The UEMOA that the ambassador talked about is made up of French-speaking countries that are also members of ECOWAS. So, and Anglophone just 5, and then Lusophone 2. And when it comes to voting or whatever, you know that those who have 8 will always have their say, their way. They try to do that. But the key thing is that Nigeria, where ECOWAS is located, has taken its eye off the ball, allowing and nature abhors a vacuum. What has happened is that while Nigeria does not pay so much attention, others have capitalized on that to now maximize their own national and government interests at the expense of the regional agenda that was there. For instance, the movement from 7 or 9 commissioners to 15 was an ill-advised one. I haven't seen any. Look at all the other organizations. Nobody, even the AU, the EU, they cannot tell you that people will suddenly say that everybody will have a commissioner. Where is the money coming from? And Nigeria, which is the biggest contributor, was just watching and allowed it to happen. Now they have tried it for how many years with wastage of resources manpower and all that, and all the inefficiency and incompetence and lack of vision that has come with it, only to come back after how many years, since 2012 or 2011 to 2022, to now come back to 7 commission. It was never a good cost-effective thing, because what is happening is that ECOWAS became top heavy. Having people now, it was now servicing people, servicing human personnel, instead of working for the community of more than 400 million people. So I hope it is not just having a small, cost-effective that will deliver it. It will still require the Ture Gambian president that is coming has a job. His team have their job cut out, because the outgoing team have really taken ECOWAS almost 20 years backwards. In the way they conducted their affairs. Look at the resurgence of military rule. There haven't been any strategic way in addressing them. Look at the consolidation of democracy. Countries were calling out what you call political and constitutional coups, and ECOWAS was just watching. 3 countries or so, they will change constitutions, rig elections, and then extend their power, their stay, their tenure. That is part of the problem that ECOWAS is facing today. But the leadership has never been up to it, and that is because unless and until Nigeria, they call it Big Brother, and the regional power, if you ask me, Nigeria has to assert its leadership to make sure that ECOWAS does not go underground, because with what has been happening, ECOWAS was losing its reputation. ECOWAS cannot even handle simple conflict. This was an organization that ended 2 wars in civil wars, Liberia and Sierra Leone, and was able to manage the conflicts situation, or this the regional, the membership dichotomy. But now it has really surrendered to it. Officials are now acting as if they are representing their governments, instead of the so-called ECOWAS of people that we talk about. That has to change. It is not just by having 7 commissioners. It is about going back to the objectives, going back to the goals of the founding fathers. That this is not an organization to begin to talk about your country. You become supranational. You are above, the country that sent you. You have to work for the organization. I think those that have been there for the past 10 years have not been working for the organization. And also, ECOWAS, instead of going, there are some things, anyway, we'll have time to talk about them. The selection of the president of the commission used to be based on, linguistic. That is after francophone, anglophone, and then lusophone. But suddenly, they changed it to alphabetical order. And that changing to alphabetical order has meant that since 2012 or 2011, it's been headed by people from one linguistic zone, which is francophone, and that has not helped. Meanwhile, in choosing the chairmanship, they are taking the linguistic zone, which is when somebody from francophone finishes as chairman, then you go to somebody with anglophone, and so on and so forth. So they have brought in, shooting themselves in the foot, and then Nigeria allowing that kind of changes, maybe because of the numerical number that when they go to election, or deciding by vote, that it will lose. But you have to have, if you are putting your money, put your money where your mouth is. You can imagine the UN that contributes more than any other person. They cannot allow you to, for instance, to get anybody else that will head the World Bank. And there is a common a common agreement that Europe will also present somebody that will head the IMF. Of course, Nigeria will say they are abiding by the headquarters agreement, but at times you have to take hard decisions. and go beyond these things and call everybody to order. Because if you leave them, ECOWAS will go underground. So Nigeria has to step up.
Paul Ejime, thank you very much indeed. As a matter of fact, you have raised multifaceted issues, our challenges, confronting ECOWAS as a sub-regional body. The fault lines are just many. The Anglophone, Francophone, Lusophone perspective to that, and as well as leadership. Now, let's return to Abuja here, where we still have Ambassador Sani Musa. You've listened to Paul Ejime, cataloging, some of the challenges, some of them are so endemic, that it may be difficult to erase from the structure or administration of ECOWAS. Now, the reform that is being prepared at the moment, do you think such reforms will address some of these critical, issues that Paul Ejime, have led to bear? How will the new face of ECOWAS tend to tackle these problems, especially the idea of alphabetical order in terms of leadership, and again making the chairmanship of the organization to be in one section of the body?
Let me commence with correcting the impression or the allusion put forward by my friend Paul regarding the distribution of positions in ECOWAS. The protocol on the distribution of position is as old as the reform since 2017, when the organization moved from the secretariat to the commission. They come up with a protocol on distribution of positions. And the issue of linguistic, that is the countries where I can say the president is not a new one. If you look at the past three president of the commission, they started from B, Benin and Burkina Faso, and then C now, which is Cote d'Ivoire, which is the current president. And then after Cote d'Ivoire, it is expected that if you look at the alphabet in ECOWAS, then what we have next in the series of countries is G. So it has been there for a very long time. It's not that it was changed recently, it has been like that for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to the share authority, the share authority is also moved that one is based on linguistic. For instance, if an Anglophone is the share authority for 2021-2022 period, it is expected by 2022-2023 period a Francophone will take over a Lusophone. And it has been like that. For the last 40 years, it has been like that. It's not that it's something new. So perhaps it's just to clear this. It's not that we have something new or something was changed recently. It has been like that. But coming back to the issue of reform, well, Nigeria, as well rightly mentioned, as the major contributor to the organization and perhaps the biggest country in the region, and of course, again, host to major ECOWAS institutions such as the ECOWAS Commission, the ECOWAS Parliament, and the ECOWAS Court of Justice. Perhaps this gives Nigeria the advantage of knowing the organization better because it is hosting these organizations. And tangibly, we have done so many analyses to really find a way of making the organization to be able to work more effectively beyond what it is doing now. And that was why we felt that the first thing to do, there must be structural reform. If you have a structure whereby even the managers of the organization have the duplicity of their schedules clashing with each other, there is no way they will perform. what we will be having is macro-managing, a lot of wastages, and what have you. And that was exactly what was happening. Yours to, I can say, to satisfy the interests of some countries which they felt they need to have that sense of belonging, to belong into the center. But since it is not working, diplomacy is not about, there must be engagement. Those countries, some of them feel that they are surrendering some of their sovereignty to be part of ECOWAS. They have to abide by the protocol which they sign, to put their constitution aside. So you have to engage them always. There is always a wide gap between theory and practice when it comes to diplomacy. You have to do a lot of engagement behind the doors to make sure that you are carrying countries along. More especially that when you are talking about ECOWAS, we are talking about regional integration. And that was exactly what Nigeria did to ensure that we always have the structure that will deliver. Now, from the recruitment, right from the recruitment, what this time around, the method change to ensure that we must have people that have the capacity, the wherewithal, the competency to run those positions. For instance, let me give you an example with Nigeria. For the first time in the 47 years of ECOWAS, when Nigeria was allocated the position of Commissioner Internal Services, the Minister of Foreign Affairs made an advert on 2 daily Nigerian newspapers, inviting all Nigerians that have the requirements, stating these are the requirements that are needed for the person that will hold that position. So it opened the position to all Nigerians to apply. At the end of the day, about 338, not about, exactly 338 Nigerians applied for the position. Out of it, the government set up a committee that went through it, through all the CVs, to make sure that they pick the best out of that number. And along that line, 10 were shortlisted. It was the 2 ministers of foreign affairs, both the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Minister, the Minister of State, as well as the Minister of Finance, who is also a member of the ECOWAS Council of Ministers, and the Director General of National Intelligence Agency, that conducted interview for 2 days. For 2 days, left what they are doing to make sure they selected the best candidate. And those 3 candidates that they submitted to Mr. President, and Mr. President conveyed those names to the ECOWAS for interviews. And they went to Ghana. In Ghana, the chair of authority set up an ad hoc committee, ministerial ad hoc committee, that is composed of ministers of foreign affairs and finance from the member countries, to make sure that they carry out a very competitive process to select the best out of the nominees. So even from the process this time around, we are able to make sure that there is strict adherence to ensure that any person coming in to take a position at the Commission must have the capacity to do so.
Well, Ambassador Musa Nuhu, thanks a lot for your explanation. But I would like you very quickly to respond to one of the issues raised by Paul Ejime, namely in his view that Nigeria has sometimes, and in critical moments, according to him, taken its eyes off the ball, which is why you're having some of these complaints of inefficiency or lack of operational grit in ECOWAS itself. And in the meantime, Nigeria is a major contributor. Is that a correct assessment, that Nigeria has not been dealing with ECOWAS issues hands-on?
I don't believe in that. Perhaps in Nigeria's engagement with the outside world, we all know that it starts with our neighbors. And perhaps when it comes to multilateral diplomacy, our actions started in ECOWAS, more especially with the new EU principle of subsidiarity and complementarity. We know that all our actions at the African Union or at the UN begin with ECOWAS. So perhaps I feel that the government is doing much more when it comes to ECOWAS issue than any other organization which Nigeria is involved. But as I said, there is a wide gap between theory and diplomacy. There are certain things which I cannot mention here publicly, which are perhaps because of how sensitive they are. But I want to assure you that the government is always have keen interest on whatever ECOWAS is doing. And that was why they have to rally for it. Because before reaching this where we are today, Nigeria put a lot of effort to convince the countries to agree with this, even the reform. Because in ECOWAS, decisions are taken by what Paul is saying about election, when it comes to election and so on. In ECOWAS, we don't do that. Decisions always in ECOWAS are taken by consensus. Yes, in some of the protocols, in some of the, yes, there is issue of two-third majority or whatever, but it has never been practiced. Because we are talking about regional integration. Countries, you must carry all countries along.
Yeah. Okay. Integration, national integration, regional integration, and what have you. And if you are partnering with, some nations who may have grouped themselves as those who are also loyal to a foreign government, to the point where they consider their loyalty of that country first before the regional loyalty, then it means that whatever Nigeria may have put in place, in terms of coordination or convincing the members to take a right direction, may never yield dividends. Practically, that is what we're seeing today. But otherwise, ECOWAS was not really hosted on a wrong footing. It started early. It's a good foundation laid by our early leaders. All right, let's get back to Ambassador Nuhilia Dunia. You were the first person to raise the issue of fault lines with respect to Anglophone, Francophone, Lusophone, dimension to this conversation. And from what I gathered, it will be extremely very difficult for ECOWAS as a nation to ensure that it is rendering the services for which it was established. To what extent, did that or does that issue of loyalty or no loyalty bring about barriers to trade and investment and development gaps and nascent regional economic governance? Because of course, when we say ECOWAS, is Economic Community of West Africa.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, communication is an important part of business, and movement of people is enhanced by how easily they can communicate. Communication also can be a barrier, and if you can't break it easily, then it becomes a very big problem. 47 years under an organization is yet to really have a grip of its direction. Not so much that movement is impeded, but it's so much that direction it's been lacking. Yes, West Africa by economic standards don't produce as much. Development, industrialization is not high. So we don't expect to see the movement of capital, goods and services the way we see, in Europe. But then whatever we produce, and at our level, we are supposed to have gone beyond, where we are. I have traveled around the West African coast, and what you have mostly people coming to Nigeria to buy and sell elsewhere. The economy of Republic of Benin, Togo, at a certain stage, Ghana, and I remember also in Cote d'Ivoire, quite a lot of Nigerian goods and services, spare parts, and all kinds of things. These were the mainstay of the economy. But you still have this kind of idea of discrimination. These are Nigerians. I'm talking about certain countries that I have actually worked in, and they mentality of the people. Oh, these are Nigerians, they have wasted their country, they don't have whatever, they've come here to spoil our country. And so when there is any little thing, they become victims. We had that in Senegal, we have that several times in Cote d'Ivoire, we've had that, in Gabon coming up, and, this and that. And these are things that don't encourage, togetherness. Like ECOWAS is trying, to forge. I have seen all this kind of vindictiveness, in virtually all, the francophones, countries, and that attitude, needs, to change. I do not know precisely how it came about, but I think it probably, is a response, to certain behavioral, patterns, but we need to really do much, to break certain, barriers. And, the language barrier has to be broken. The mentality of the people also, have to change. In Nigeria here, I have not seen anybody being victimized because he's an Ivorian or he's a Malian or it's because of, whatever. Nobody really, cares, so long as you are doing, your businesses and, whatever. But out there, because of the level of poverty and because they don't have, any foreigner that is making it becomes a target. They whip up sentiments, and before you know it, things happen. And I'm saying this as a factual,
this thing,
xenophobia. Is it about?
Yes, that's xenophobia.
I have seen it myself. I have witnessed it. I have handled it in many of these countries.
Which leads us, Ambassador. That's a valid issue that you have raised. Which leads us to whether ECOWAS, as an international institution, is working for the 400 million plus people of the region. The question is going to Paul Ejime. Paul Ejime, against the background of, if you may, the huge governance structure which has been trimmed now of ECOWAS, and the many protocols and attempts by the leaders of the sub-region to ensure that ECOWAS remains a relevant international institution. That question is one that is ECOWAS working for its 400 plus million people? And if the answer is no, what can be done?
Well, that is a tough one, but I will say yes and no. Yes, because for what all the criticisms you have about, it's still the only or one of the few organizations where you have a free visa for its citizens. At least the 400 million people can move to another country for at least 90 days without requiring visa. It has issues about implementation, and that is where the question comes in. And no, because ECOWAS can do more. It boils down to this issue of about commitment, about whether it is as much as the members wanted to work for them. That is what is happening. And then one, I was talking about Nigeria and leadership. It is about, do you know that as we speak, the outgoing government management in ECOWAS, which has received 3 months extension beyond the time it was supposed to go. They were supposed to go in March. They asked for 3 months. After the 3 months, they have also been granted another 10 days. And you will say, well, if what you didn't do in 4 years, and you didn't do it in 4 years, 3 months, what is the 10 days about? These are some of the issues that is clogging and bringing back ECOWAS. And also, will you also believe it, that the outgoing management is still recruiting officials for ECOWAS, and you wonder if they didn't do this recruitment all this while, what is the urgency? Why are you trying to tie the hands of those who are coming in? These are the issues. I know the permanent representative, there are a lot that he cannot talk about, but he's working with his team, but they are being shackled by all these fault lines that I mentioned. So ECOWAS need to embody itself, remove some of these things for it to work. And Nigeria can do so. Nigeria can help. When you see, I know that an MP raised it at the Nigerian National Assembly recently, or is it that, yes. and the committee has been set up to ask the question: the 1.7 or 1.8 billion dollars that Nigeria has spent over the last 10 years, is it money? What was it? Has there been a cost benefit to it? And other countries might be asking the same question. ECOWAS needs to step up. Nigeria, the big brother, of course you will have with some resistance when some of these things are happening, but you have to put your foot down. For instance, ECOWAS is there, and France and Cote d'Ivoire and some other people are now taking the echo that ECOWAS has been working on as a regional currency, and now said that it is what is the French, the Francophone will now use to replace the CFA francs. These are some of the, if you allow some of these things to continue, you will be left with a chaff. You will be left with asking yourself, where is the benefit for the amount of money that Nigeria needs to be more strategic, to put the first 11 there, the first food, bring your first food forward. They will resist you, but you tell them that you are the one bringing the money. Without money, ECOWAS cannot function. Of course, you have to do that with diplomacy. You have to be mindful. But if you allow them or give them any little, give the African 1 second, it will take 2 hours or 20 kilometers. Nigeria needs to mark it's not micromanaging, but at least having people that will watch what is going on. But remember, let me also cite another example. The protocol on democracy and good governance, where you have to address these issues of bad governance on the board, is now being, they've said they are going to amend it. But 3 countries, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, let me call them by themselves, and Togo, are rejecting the fact that the protocol is being amended so that you write in their national constitution the fact that presidents cannot serve more than 2 terms. Because that is part of the problem. But these countries are resisting it. The civil society in West Africa has come up with a position to say, listen, do this. Until you do that, you will still find people. Conde, for instance, of Guinea, it was what he did. He changed through a referendum, changed the constitution. Cote d'Ivoire, it was done. And if you allow other countries to do it, I know Nigeria has gone to the summit to say, stop this tenure elongation. It will go beyond just saying it. Act it. Make it happen. Otherwise, it won't work. Citizens will continue to ask the question, is it really about ECOWAS of a state or ECOWAS of people? Okay. Let me stop there.
Okay, thank you, Paul Ejime, for stopping there at the right time. If we have 400 million ECOWAS members, that's to say all the countries that make up ECOWAS, and Nigeria is about 200 million, the first place, so we're like half of 50% of the percentage. So, well, I think like if we're spending the money more than any other country, we won't bother much about that. But what we're talking about now is restructuring to make ECOWAS effective, to make it efficient, right, to be able to provide service to its people. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. We take a short break now. When we return, the conversation will continue.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. All our 3 guests are still with us. Paul Ejime via Zoom in the UK, and Nigeria Summer Ambassador to Mali is here with us in the studios, along with Nigeria's current permanent rep to ECOWAS, Ambassador Musa Nuhu. Ambassador Musa Nuhu, there are a number of issues on the table that would warrant your response. Very briefly, could you respond to those issues?
Yes, thank you very much for giving me that opportunity, and let me just take it quickly. We know the issue of extension duties, which Paul was talking about, is a technical issue because in ECOWAS, they are using a platform, an online platform, which all mails are treated online. So if the management didn't get that extension for that 10 days, there is no way they will work, which means the organization will not have management. And that was why it's more technical for them to get that tender, so that their names should be absorbed into the system to be able to continue working before the swearing-in ceremony. So it's just because of technical issue, that extension for viewers to understand. But let me quickly mention this. We know that ECOWAS have a lot of challenges, but despite that, it is rated as the most integrated region in Africa. Despite all these challenges, and where you will now
more integrated,
the most integrated region,
more integrated than SADC.
Then SADC. Allow me to land. If you look at SADC, they don't have the challenges of ECOWAS. We are just talking about 8 countries. 9 in West Africa are Francophone countries. I can say 9 because Guinea-Bissau, which is a lusophone, is also using the CFA franc. So it's they are using the same currency with them. So, but if you look at SADC, all of them are Anglophone countries. They are all almost, when you look at their culture, religion, and so on, they all share the same. If you look at AMU, that is Arab Maghreb Union, it's the same thing. Almost all of them are Arab, share the same language, the same culture, the same religion. If you look at ECAS, that is the East and Central African Community, it's the same. The same thing with SADC, which we talk about. If you look at ECOWAS, we have a greater number, most numbers of the countries, greater number Francophone. We have lusophone. We have large number of Muslims. You have large number of Christians, and among we have the Sahel region, which is a very vast land in the region with desert. There are not much economic activities going on there, perhaps. So if you look at all these challenges, but despite the challenges, ECOWAS region remained the most integrated region in West Africa. Because we have the protocol on free movement and goods and services. It's only ECOWAS that have this. A citizen of West Africa can move to another country without obtaining any visa. Then you also have the right of establishment, whereby apart from moving into the country, you stay for 90 days. Again, the right of establishment allow a citizen of the country, because we have what we call community citizens, whereby if you go to Benin, Nigerians are in Benin in millions. You go to Togo, when we went through the election in last 2 years in Togo, we learned that we have over 3 million Nigerians. In Ghana, it's the same thing. And all of them, some of them are living there, they are engaged in businesses, some of them are even accepted to be part of the political system of those countries. It's only in ECOWAS region that you will have that in Africa. Again, when you come to the economic front, the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme is the only one so far being operated seamlessly in the whole African region. Nigerian companies that produce goods here are free to go and sell those goods in other West African countries without paying any tax or custom duties. As I'm talking to you now, we have 865 Nigerian companies that are active in ETLS, producing over 10,000 products, which they sell in all these West African countries without payment of duties or dues.
What kind of goods are these companies producing?
Thank you very much. You can take all household products, pharmaceuticals, including automobiles. For instance, when I mentioned this to a group that I was addressing the other time, they were wondering, what are we producing in Nigeria? Then I told them I was opportune, before I became the Nigerian ambassador to ECOWAS, I was held in the National Approval Committee of the ETLS at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And you will be surprised if you go to, let's say, Abara Industrial Estate in Ogun State, or Arauni, Ikeja, and other places in Lagos. If you see the number of companies that are producing goods that are going to other, selling to other West African countries, you will talk of pharmaceuticals, household products, even automobiles, including vehicles. Do you know this? I know trucks being used by Dangote. All those trucks that you are seeing Dangote using, they are produced in Ikeja, they are assembled in Ikeja, here in Nigeria. The Emerson, I know while you were in Mali, I recall they signed an agreement to, so many products, Nigerian products going there. And just last year, I took, because from time to time I used to go around to just make sure we are monitoring the activities of our private sector. So when we took statistics at the semi-border from January to July on the number of trucks that went out from Nigeria, we discovered that from January to July, 5,388 trucks left Nigeria to other West African countries.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, Kirian, this is a matter we have discussed on Good Morning Nigeria, and I'm sure the ambassador could have a view on this. Yeah, these trucks are taking out goods for the use in other West African countries. Unfortunately, some of the trucks that are coming to Nigeria are bringing in arms and ammunition, small arms and light weapons, with which the insecurity is blossoming in Nigeria. I mean, you have there is virtually no corner of the country where you don't have small arms and light weapons.
Well, the issue of you cannot blame ECOWAS for because ECOWAS doesn't have police or security agencies that are manning our borders. But so that we cannot and perhaps there is no country even in the world that you can say there is no movement of small and light weapons. Everywhere in the world we witness that. It's not only in Nigeria.
That's true. That is certainly true. You know, of course, the gains you mentioned, you know, cannot be overemphasized. No doubt about that. I mean, a body that has been there for over 47 years, there must be some, you know, yeah, exactly, some positivities. Yes. Now, Ambassador Donia, let's talk about internal insecurity in most of the ECOWAS nations. Crime, illicit trading, and smuggling, especially arms, like Kingsley just mentioned, across borders. You know, there's this terrorism, violent extremism. There's also piracy. We also talk of political instability, and election-related violence in some of these countries, drug trafficking, and what have you. How have all these vices, you know, affected the performance of ECOWAS as a subnational body?
Thank you very much. Before I go into the vices, I just want to highlight probably the magnitude, you know, of insecurity that abound in the ECOWAS, you know, sub-region. The Sahel region, which he mentioned, is a totally chaotic, you know, region where anarchy reigns, where power, drugs, and you know, whatever, you know, the order of the day. Take Mali, for example, that I know very well. You know, Mali is almost twice the size of Nigeria, with about 15 million people living in the southern part. Now, the entire north, which is almost the size of Nigeria, is inhabited by just a little bit over 1 million people. And the regions around Kidal, you know, moving into that area that links, you know, of Libya, is completely an ungovernable, you know, area. And when Muammar Gaddafi was around, he was in charge and took care of everything that was moving around that area. So we didn't have this kind of escalation and this outward movement, you know, to other parts, you know, of the area. With his death, we are told that, and it's confirmed, over 300 tons of weapons got missing overnight. As I speak, that region is controlled by drug cartels. They bring in drugs from Latin America in planes. Sometimes they offload the drugs and blow off, you know, the planes. And you find all this movement of drugs and, you know, whatever around the axis, into Morocco, into Algeria, and, you know, whatever. That is why the war, I mean, the crisis in the Sahel had intensified. Now, with this kind of characters, you will expect guns are everywhere, and with no security management to control the borders. Virtually all the borders around are very porous, and these people move from Mali, they move down to Burkina Faso, and they are able to equally come from the Chadian axis and then into Central African Republic and then Cameroon into Nigeria. Now these are very weak states. Chad is relatively okay because it is the headquarters of French hegemony. They have their arsenals there, so they are able to help Chad. And Chad, if you enter into their capital today, is completely secured. You can't move from here to here without being checked, and things like that. Now this is where probably we have had this movement into Nigeria, and then we're having all kinds of the debacle, that we talked about. So security, has been a very big problem, and we are aware of certain mechanisms that have been taken, like the Niamey, protocol, as well as this Mauritanian, protocol, but weak people can defeat security, and it's an association, mostly of people who can't help themselves, and it's a very big problem. Now this insecurity has created so much problem. Beyond that, we still have countries that are even at loggerheads with themselves. Mali has a problem, with Burkina Faso. So to call for Malians to come together, and form a common front, to battle this is not possible. It's not possible.
Well, Ambassador, thanks. Because we're getting pressed for time. The issue of security that you have just mentioned, I would like Paul Ejime to also weigh in here. Paul, well, there is, if you may, a new reality that has faced ECOWAS over the past decade or so. The sudden rise of ungovernable forces, such as Ambassador Iliano has been talking about, following the collapse of the regime of Muammar Gaddafi. And sometimes, Kida, you have to ask yourself that question. What was Muammar Gaddafi's intention in amassing so much weaponry and armaments in his country, so that after his death and the collapse of his government, you now had a dispersal of those weapons? Has ECOWAS come to the realization that the region is ablaze, as it were, with drug cartels coming in now, illegal miners, and all kinds of elements that are just banging across the Sahel and then descending into countries such as we have in Nigeria? Has ECOWAS come to the realization that this is a matter that it must also take head on, whether it's the subgroup of the French countries or ECOWAS itself as a 15-member organization? Paul?
Yes, let me not, one has to be realistic. Yes, ECOWAS has done so in terms of making some protocols, anti-terrorism, small arms, and all that, even as far as the Gulf of Guinea and the region, the Sahel. But Kingsley, even gold or diamond requires some shining, otherwise it will gather dust. ECOWAS cannot continue to live on the past glory. It has to move with the dynamics, with emerging threats, with using new methods to fight some of this. What are these? They have to come up with the protocols, not just having them, but implementation is the problem. For instance, the Mali issue, one would have expected that ECOWAS, instead of just slamming sanctions, would have gone to find out the neighbors, these ungovernable and ungoverned space that we're talking about. How can you check it now that Gaddafi is no longer there? Algeria holds key to it. Mauritania. These are some of the countries in that Sahel. They are not members of ECOWAS. But ECOWAS, in trying to solve the problem of Mali, should be concerned about the neighbors of Mali, how these things happens. And then go into the issue of also asking questions. UN has about 15,000 personnel there in Mali, MINUSMA, trying to check terrorism, yet insecurity is still there. France used to have some 4,100 Barkhane forces. Some of them were in northern Mali. They have not been able to address this issue. ECOWAS, I'm not saying that ECOWAS on its own can do it, but there has to be that commitment. There has to be at least a political will to do that through using strategic and workable strategy that can do it. I think ECOWAS has not been
all right. All right, Paul Ejime, we're going to pause you there, and of course, all our guests, because of want of time, we'll have another day for this conversation. I know you wanted to touch on some of the issues that Paul has raised, but because of time, please let's just first of all appreciate Paul Ejime, an international affairs analyst, for reaching us all the way from the UK via Zoom. Thank you, Paul. We also like to thank the two ambassadors, Ambassador Nuhu Ilia Ali Dunia, former Nigerian ambassador to Mali. We thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you. And of course, Ambassador Sani Musa Nuhu, Nigerian permanent representative of Nigeria to ECOWAS.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Look, we used to have ECOMOG those days, where that military arm of ECOWAS. Isn't that what it was then?
Yes, I mean, ECOMOG was a necessity on the brainchild of Nigeria's military administration, headed by General Ibrahim Babangida at the Majority, and it worked in terms of Liberia, in terms of
Okay. We don't have time any longer. We were told earlier on today that the Nigerian Correctional Service has confirmed that at about 10 p.m. Tuesday, some yet to be identified gunmen attacked the medium security custodial center Kuje in the Federal Capital Territory. And joining us now from Kuje is a correspondent Victor Azu, who will be giving us an update on the attack. Victor, good morning. Let's get to know what is playing out at the moment with respect to the attack at the Kuje Custodial Center.
Well, what is playing out here, as we know it, given the information, the news that broke late yesterday night, that some unidentified gunmen attacked the Kuje Medium Custodial Center. What we have met here, well, is a brick wall of security. We have not been allowed even beyond the first barricade. We are told that the Minister of Defense is inside the facility, and there is an instruction that the press should not be allowed in until he leaves. But what I do know is that there are efforts being made to see how they can stop those who might have escaped from the attack last night, to ensure that they do not mingle and begin to cause more problems for society.
All right. Well, I think that's much that we can take, because we have to round off the program. As a matter of fact, from all indications, he doesn't have much information yet, because he couldn't gain entrance into the facilities to talk to the administrators. And that's how we conclude today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you again tomorrow for a fresh package. My name is Kirian Umayo. Do have a great day.
And I'm Kingsley, yourself. Also look after yourselves, and see you tomorrow.